and I'm so delighted to present to you Roger Dixon-Spain, who is going to speak to us about this really massive paradigm shift that he experienced in his lifetime, what that was like, what that's done for him. And the title of it is It's Never Too Late, Starting My Life's Work at 70.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Salem. You might not think it or believe it, but the truth is that it's never too late. How can I say that? Because a whole new beginning opened up for me at the age of 70. And this webinar is about what led me to that moment. I can hardly believe that in my 75th year, I'm talking to all you guys on the internet. But there you go. I'm going to start tonight by giving you 5 words, which I would like you to keep in the back of your mind whilst you're listening to me tonight. I'm not necessarily going to refer back to them. I would just like you to remember them. And they are commitment, hard work, dedication, responsibility, and action. I think they're important because of the principles and values that are embedded in them, and because they pepper the story that I'm about to tell. Of all of them, I think that commitment is perhaps the most important in my mind. And I want to read you something from a guy called E.H. Murray, who led the Scottish Himalayan expedition. I don't know what year that happened in, but it's something that never fails to move me, and I hope moves you too. Until one is committed, there is hesitancy, the chance to draw back, always ineffectiveness. Concerning all acts of initiative and creativity, there is one elementary truth, the ignorance of which kills countless ideas and splendid plans. That the moment one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves too. All sorts of things occur to help one that would never otherwise have occurred. A whole stream of events issue from the decision, raising in one's favour all manner of unforeseen incidents, meetings and material assistance, which no man could ever have dreamt would come his way. I have learned a deep respect for one of Goethe's couplets. Whatever you can do, or dream you can, begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. I just love that. I think it simply means that, provided we're committed to the task at hand, that we should never ever be frightened of stepping out purposefully in the direction of our dreams. We may eventually be able to accept a statement like this and adopt it as a belief of our own, but not in the beginning. In the beginning, we come from nowhere, our spiritual dimension, to this our physical reality, into the now here. I just love that play on words, and for what they so accurately describe. We know that we're destined at the end of all this life stuff, with all its challenges, successes, failures, mistakes and imperfection, to go back to nowhere and be our spiritual selves again. When we arrive here, we are perfect, a blank sheet of paper to be written on. But from the moment we draw our first breath, we're conditioned, indoctrinated, and given a set of beliefs by those who love us best. These beliefs are not our own, although we may call them so. For 95% of people, these are the beliefs that they will cleave to for the whole of their adult lives, and never reach a point where they would have what I would call knowings of their own. It took me until I was 65. Isn't that shocking? What you see is Michael, Marjorie and me. My mum and dad are smiling on reaching that perfect day. What it doesn't show you is what they had to go through to get there. A world war, 6 years of unremitting hell on earth, My mum lost her first husband in the first few weeks of the conflict. They'd only been married a year. She was a Wren cipher officer, coding and decoding messages and signals from warships at sea. Dad lost his elder brother in 1941 and spent 6 years at sea, pretty much 4 hours on, 4 hours off, with very little shore leave. I think we should be emulating these people. In 1939, when it started, they didn't have any idea of how long it might go on for. We've been into our present crisis for about 3 months, and we're already grumbling. I think we need to get a grip. These guys gave me so much, and above all, the principles and values that I've always lived by. Their simple guidance was to be honest always, to be kind, and not to inconvenience other people. Aside from this, I was given a set of beliefs, as we all are from birth, one of which was that I'd been born to be a farmer. This belief was reinforced throughout my childhood and late into my teens. Some of that reinforcement came to me from stories that were told around the fireplace about my ancestors. They were gilded and polished, true or false. They were beguiling stories nonetheless, and they were really, really powerful. George Thompson, my grandmother's father, he started out life in the 1850s as a smallholder and potato merchant. By the end of his life, he was farming 8,000 acres. His son Henry, my grandmother's brother, went on to farm 28,000 acres under the plough, using horses and oxen as its motive power. Can you imagine that? This, then, was the farming dynasty to which it seemed I was destined to belong. Our family didn't come from a long line of farmers, but from a long line of merchantmen, clergymen and artists. So we sort of got into the whole farming thing by happy accident. Harry and Alice. Harry, my grandfather, was born a vicar's son in 1881, qualified as an architect in 1904, aged 23, self-educated, he hadn't got a penny to his name. He fell in love with Alice, George Thompson's daughter. They married in 1911, but only after my grandfather had agreed to a marriage contract that required him to give up being an architect and become a farmer, would you believe? Between qualifying and marrying, he was clerk of works at Holcombe Hall, Lord Leicester's estate in Norfolk, I guess to learn something of estate management and farming. My grandfather was gifted 1,000 acres on his marriage to my grandmother, but this didn't sit very comfortably with him. He insisted that his father-in-law act as banker and allow him to buy the farm. You see him here in 1913, looking super confident at the time when he achieved this. When he died in 1960, he was farming 3,000 acres, and for someone who hadn't wanted to farm, not bad. So, no pressure then. These guys were held up to be my heroes, the people I should emulate. It was powerful stuff that was part of my belief system for most of the rest of my life. Aged just 7, I was sent away to school 160 miles from home with a ration card round my neck so I wouldn't lose it. Food was scarce. No sweets. We were allowed just one on Fridays after lunch. Junior school was okay. I excelled on the sports field, but not in the classroom. Senior school, however, was a disaster. It was a really black time for me. For various reasons I was shunned. I never seemed to see the light of day, either on the sports field or in the classroom, and left with just 5 O-levels, English literature, English language, geography, art, and, would you believe, divinity? There was some family joke at the time that I'd probably wind up being a literary, arty African missionary. Everybody thought it was hilarious. I didn't. I spent 2 years labouring on the farms before going to Cirencester. I'd actually wanted to do the 3-year management course when I went, but I was told that I would do the 1-year short course instead. This was called the social course, for obvious reasons. Thwarted by this, I found myself disinterested. They didn't teach me a lot there. Perhaps I wasn't listening or paying attention. What I did learn, however, was how to drink beer and chase women, which was great. I went to Australia for 2 years after that, worked my passage as a deckhand on a cargo ship out and back, left a boy, and came back very much a man. I arrived home expecting that I would be right at the centre of things, helping to run and farm 3,000 acres. I wasn't allowed in and had to sit on my hands and watch a catastrophic decline unfold in family fortunes that it seemed that I was powerless to either influence or stop. In 1967, I got married, probably to get away from home. In the same year, the first 370-acre farm was sold. In 1972, the 1,000-acre farm that I was working on as a foreman was sold too. Very suddenly, I had nowhere to live with my young family. I had a blistering row with my dad that day and was told to go and farm a 250-acre farm down the road on my own. There were 5 men and a foreman on that farm. Can you believe that? On the first morning, I did the only sensible thing that I thought I could do and made all the farm staff redundant with the exception of one man. My father-in-law, who was a wily old fox and knew a thing or two about money, helped me with cash flow forecasts and a business plan, and we turned a £15,000 loss into a profit in the first year. I was now a tractor-driving farmer for the first time, picking up the skills that I was going to need so desperately a few years hence. In 1974, aged 29, I was sponsored and accepted onto an advanced farm business management course funded by the Worshipful Company of Farmers. There were 18 of us from all branches of the agricultural industry banged up in a hotel for 3 weeks with no time off. I was by far the youngest. It was run by a guy called Ian Reid, who was at the time head of European Studies at London University's Y College. On the first morning, he pointed at me and said, "Roger, why do you farm?" And I went, and he said, "If you don't know, Roger, perhaps you shouldn't be." And that was the truth. It took me until 1995 to tell myself that truth. What I had believed since birth was not my truth, and it was not my belief. I didn't want to farm. I never had, but did so perhaps out of reverence or obligation to past generations, or perhaps I just couldn't say no to my father because I was frightened of him and the expectations he had of me. Anyway, I'd left it too late. Because on the 5th of May 1976, he died very suddenly, aged 55. I'd spent the last week of his life fishing on the River Dee with him in Scotland. We had a really great time together, and that was always the case with us, as long as we weren't farming. We got home on the Sunday, we met on the Tuesday, had a heated conversation in the middle of a sugar beet field, and at 11 o'clock in the morning he stormed off, and by 2 o'clock in the afternoon he was dead. I got a call from the police who wanted me to identify a body that they believed to be my father. Having identified him, I collected his effects. Amongst them were the keys to the safe. I immediately went back to the farm office, opened the safe and took out the books. I didn't have to know anything about economics, money or farming to know that we were in deep, deep trouble. I went to tell my grandmother and my mother the news. Other than the shock, Mum took one look at the books and said, "Oh, for goodness sake, Roger, whatever you're going to do?" And I said, "To be truthful, Mum, I really don't know, but I promise you this, I'll fix it." If I've ever displayed any wisdom at all since then, it was to know that I didn't have to be clever or smart. I just needed to make sure that I always worked with people who were cleverer and smarter than me. So I went and found the best in the business, John Green, of Green Brothers of Soham. He said he was too busy and handed me on to a guy called Dick Ferber, who was farming huge acreages for the Dennis family in Lincolnshire. The ground rules with Dick were that he would pay me a visit once a month from 9 in the morning until 12 noon. and that I'd pay him £1,000 on his arrival. We did this for 6 months. When he arrived on month 6, he held out his hand and I gave him the cheque. And I said, Dick, I'm really not sure what I'm getting out of this, and I'm really, really short of cash. He looked at me and said, actually, Roger, I'm not going to be staying. I've just come to tell you that you don't need me. You're going to be all right. You'll make it. Well, I grew as many inches as it took seconds for him to pay me the compliment. It was a huge confidence boost for me. There hadn't been too many compliments flying around in my life thus far. This is a recent Google Earth image of our main holding. 1,000 acres of alluvial silt, 15 feet of topsoil, no stones, and perhaps some of the best land in the UK. I would normally ask a live audience what it was that they would notice or see most of in this photograph. The answer should be bare soil. Even the fields that would appear to be green, when viewed from above at ground level, are in fact 80% bare soil. It's not something I would have noticed in my previous incarnation. We humans have been creating bare soil and destroying ecosystems for 10,000 years. This is a photograph of our farmyard and is really to demonstrate the continuous and unrelenting demand for capital investment if you want to be a player in modern agriculture. Grain store, onion store, chill store, packing shed, offices, stores, workshops. You've got the picture. It represents about £3 million of investment on the back of low value product. This would have been taken about a year after my father's death. The white is all new concrete and a new grain store. In 1976, we had nothing. No modern buildings. Those that we had been built on the farms that had been sold. We had a fleet of 35 horsepower tractors and 1.5 ton carts and a load of old machinery. The cottages were falling apart and we had too many people. I mean, it's such a long time ago now, I can't remember how many men we had exactly. I think it was about 13 or 14. Most of them were made redundant in my first month in the hot seat. This is the remains of a 3,000 acre estate. My first harvest, we were still carting grain 15 miles to this grain dryer. Again, I would describe this as inappropriate investment on the back of low value product. When it was built in 1961, it cost £120,000. At today's values, because I've looked it up, that would be £2,272,883 and 99 pence. And don't forget the 99 pence. We turned it into a business in its own right, storing and drying grain for government intervention, local merchants, maltsters and farmers, and generating a profit of about £60,000 to £100,000 per annum. Clean, uniform, not a weed in sight, a really good example of monoculture at its best. Green when you look across the field, walk into it and look down, and it's 80% bare soil. I think it was sterile. Everything seemed to have to die except for the crop that we were growing. And yet, this had been virgin marsh. It was first ploughed up by George Thompson in 1919. There was not one molecule of that original ecosystem left. What you see is the result of an unholy alliance with fossil fuels and their derivatives and the chemical industry. We were just using soil as a medium to stand plants up in, whilst we fed them N, P and K, and sprayed them with a cocktail of herbicides, fungicides, insecticides, growth regulars and desiccants. When you say it, it doesn't sound right, does it? This was a 60-acre field of potatoes. I think they were a variety called Romano. I was so proud of this. For me, this was perfection. This and the previous photograph, the super clean wheat field, and turning the grain dryer into a business in its own right, were the epitome of what I was all about at the time. I was really, really good at my job, but I think I wasn't a farmer. I was a technician. This is the same field in the autumn of the year, me with my youngest son George. Guess who he was named after? now 42. And what do you see? Bare soil and compaction. This is a picture, and you'll have to excuse the language, of my big fuck-off tractor. I just loved it. Great clouds of black smoke with an exhaust pipe you could stick your fist into, air-conditioned and quadraphonic sound, insulated against the natural world. It could pull 8 furrows at 9 inches faster than you could walk. One man could plough 100 acres in a day, no problem. It worked 24 hours a day in 2 shifts, from harvest time until late autumn, subsoiling and ploughing. 2 drivers and amazing work rates. But what do you see? Bare soil. The unintended consequences of laying soil open to wind, rain and sun have been with us for millennia, but more so within my lifetime. Technology has accelerated the damage exponentially, and I'm the industrial exemplar of all of this. Shame on me. This video clip was sent to me by a girlfriend who'd been driving through a heavy downpour in Yorkshire. She'd recently been talking to us about soil and land management, and she knew she had to film what she was seeing and send it to me. There you go. Huge amounts of topsoil leaving the farm gate. We're losing 27 tonnes of topsoil for every tonne of food that we produce globally, and we burn 10 calories of energy for every calorie we eat. Well, we were suffering from collapsing soils after rain. It would run together and then bake like concrete, making the establishment of crops, especially those from small seeds, really problematic. Knowing what I know now, I know that I have the solutions to these and other soil-related problems. If I could have my farm back now, I would be doing something truly radical. If I'm honest, the whole farming thing terrified me. The bank in the early days were always on my back. The weather was always unpredictable, at least I thought so, and we didn't understand what was going on underneath our feet. If we had, we would have no doubt done things differently. It took 20 years. We now had a very smart farming operation. I had done the job that I'd been given to do. There was a Damascene moment when one day I thought I was going to be farming for the rest of my life. We were on an even keel. We'd done all the difficult stuff. Some plain sailing now. Only to wake the next morning knowing that I needed to sell the business, that I just didn't want to do this farming stuff anymore. The farm was sold. We gave the money away to our linear family, leaving enough money for Gilly and I to buy a house and renovate it. There was a great and good levelling in the family. It had never sat very comfortably with me that my siblings didn't get a penny piece on my father's death. That was now taken care of. So we bought our freedom. I was bleating to one of my boys about not being quite sure what I was going to do with myself. He looked at me incredulously and said, "Oh, for goodness sake, Dad, get a clue." I thought, cheeky young monkey. "What did you want to do when you were 17? I said, "Well, I wanted to go to art school." And he said, "Get off your arse." So I did. I went to college and did a 2-year furniture making and design course. I absolutely loved it. It became a big part of what I thought my future was going to be about. Earlier, Gilly and I had discovered that we couldn't have children together, which was a huge black emotional hole. We knew we needed to find a new purpose in life, so she sold her thriving dental practice at pretty much the same time that I sold the farm. We decided that we would spend the whole of the rest of our lives adventuring, doing the things that we had either never dared do or never had time to do. So we flew aeroplanes, raced motorbikes, rock climbed, firewalked, skied, did all sorts of crazy stuff. Amongst All of that, we bought a house in the foothills of the Pyrenees from a couple of very pissed people at a bullfight for what seemed like peanuts at the time. 90,000 for a newly renovated Landaise farmhouse, 1.5 acres and a swimming pool, with some of the proceeds from the dental practice. We thought we might live there. I mean, what's not to like? We could and did let it for £1,000 a week when we weren't using it in the summer months. I mean, it was a good deal. One of the things I wanted Julie to try was sailing. So we booked ourselves a passage on a charter boat that was going to sail from Brixham on the south coast of England down the west coast of France. And since we were thinking of going to live in France, it seemed like a really good idea. It was so popular that in order to secure a berth on the boat, we were asked to pay £1,200 at the time of booking, a year in advance of going on the holiday. It actually seemed a bit steep at the time, but we booked it anyway and promptly forgot about it. 3 weeks before the due date, we had a phone call from the charter company saying that they'd had an accident with the boat. It had been repaired, but they didn't want to leave UK waters. They had decided that they were not going to sail down the west coast of France, but were going to sail up the west coast of Scotland instead. And I went, oh. Jilly said, oh, come on, Rog, where's your attitude? It's just sailing, for goodness sake. Anyway, it would be a great trip on the bikes. Well, it was, and we had a good week, although the company and the food were great. The weather wasn't, either no wind or too much. There were 19 people on board. Other than the skipper and the first mate, we seemed to be the only physically fit people, and it turned out to be a lot of physical work, so by the end of the week we were absolutely knackered. But what we saw from the deck of the boat was absolutely stunning. Before we got back on our bikes to go home, Jilly said, do you think we could live in a place like this? The answer was really a resounding yes from both of us. We would go home and test market our house. That was at the end of August 2001. We just finished a 10-year renovation on an Elizabethan hall house in Norfolk. It was a wreck when we bought it. Underneath the wreckage was an untouched original, and by the time we finished it, it was just perfect. On a Saturday morning in mid-September, just after our holiday, we were sitting at our kitchen table writing out the particulars for the house, drinking a cup of coffee. Bread had just come out of the oven, when there was a knock on the door. There stood a young couple. They said they'd been passing, saw the house, thought it was so beautiful that they couldn't resist the temptation to knock on the door and ask if they could have a look round. The intrusion meant that it took a minute or two to agree. After a guided tour, a cup of coffee, they got up to leave. The guy put his hand in his pocket and handed us his card and said, if you're ever thinking of selling this place, could you get in touch? Julie and I looked at one another and said, well, we've actually just been writing out the particulars. And he said, how much are you asking? We told him, and he said, can you be out in a month? And we said, no, but January would be okay. We got home from our holiday at the end of August 2001, and we were living on the west coast of Scotland by January the 6th, 2002. Does this sound familiar? Once one is committed, Providence moves too. We could do no wrong. A few weeks later, a modern bungalow to rent with 5 bedrooms, a workshop, locked frontage and a deep water mooring manifested itself. On June the 15th, 2002, an enforced meeting with a solicitor in Oban to get some family papers sworn was interrupted by a phone call. That phone call brought Sailean into our lives the next day. We had a period of 3 to 4 years when stuff just seemed to show up as if by magic. This photograph was taken on the day that we first saw Sailean, 74 acres and a croft house. We'd promised ourselves 2 things when we moved. First being that I would never ever have anything to do with farming again, and that we wouldn't live on an island, or we failed miserably on both counts. But we couldn't say no to this. We arrived at 11:30 that day, and by 1:30 the deal was done. We were about to experience what happens when you get out of the way and let nature do what she does best. 6 years later, this is what Sailean looked like. We hadn't done anything. We'd introduced 3 Highland cattle and a couple of ponies because we were told that if we didn't use the croft, our neighbours under crofting law could use it without our permission. We had no intention but to keep them as grass cutters, only to find when we came to sell the bullocks that nobody wanted them. So we had them slaughtered and butchered and sold the meat. That was the beginning of a small direct sales business that's still going today. This is what it looked like 2017 and 2018. 2002 to 2009, Sailean was a lifestyle choice. We'd retired, for goodness sake. And quite frankly, it was like living on the edge of heaven. Spring of 2009. This is Rebecca Hosking and her business partner Tim Green, who sadly was killed in a farming accident shortly after this photo was taken. They made a documentary called A Farm for the Future. We'd had it recorded on our Sky set-top box for weeks. It was part of a BBC Nature series at the time. Gilly had tried to watch it and fallen asleep in the process, and I think I'd probably done the same. She said, "I'll delete it." I mean, how close can you come to missing something that has the power to change your life completely forever? We watched it. It took us long to watch the film, 48 minutes and 38 seconds, to have my whole belief system reversed. Having watched it, I believed none of what I'd spent my whole adult life learning and believing. The film showed me that ploughing and cultivation was the worst thing that you could do to soil, that it should be kept covered at all times and not exposed to sun, wind and rain, that chemicals, fossil fuels and their derivatives would sound the death knell of modern farming, if not us as a species. It was truly shocking. For the several nights that followed, I didn't sleep that well. This is the true nature of a paradigm shift. It can turn you upside down and inside out, and made me realise that it's never too late, that my past experience, that perceived waste of time doing something I didn't want to do, was in fact my preparation for this one moment in my life. The response in me was immediate. I got up out of my chair, went out and started to create a no-dig vegetable garden. It took just a few days. We stuck some boards in the ground and created lowered paths, not raised beds. I remember saying to Gilly, "This is never going to work. Clashes of paradigms past and present. But look at the result." Gilly said, "How are we going to feed all these plants?" Me, a farmer? I couldn't answer the question. I didn't know. A whole lifetime in farming and me at the top of my game, not able to respond without an agronomist and a bag of fertilizer. We later learned that soil biology was the answer and the foundation of absolutely everything to do with feeding plants. This was never mentioned at agricultural college. They didn't teach it to me there. None of the clever people, the agronomists and the technologists that I employed, ever mentioned it during the whole of my time in farming. Quite the reverse. In the mid-1980s, I went out to the USA to study strawberry growing, brought back the technology and took average yields from the UK's 3.5 tonnes an acre to 12. The first step in the preparation to achieve this, I was told, was to sterilise the soil? Good grief, whatever did we think we were doing? It brings to mind at the same time the day that Gilly came to live with me on the farm on the 10th of May 1985. Etched into my consciousness forever, that when we woke up on the morning of the 11th, she said to me, "Good morning, sweetheart. I've been thinking about the farm. I know I'm not a farmer, so please don't think me critical or patronising or stupid even, but where are the animals?" Oh, how I wished that I'd been able to listen. This was a gem, a view into the world of whole systems thinking. From this huge paradigm shift started the very real journey to living authentically with our own set of beliefs and a commitment to make a difference. We started by following Joel Salatin and got into trying mob grazing, just the beginning of understanding the principles of mimicking nature with animals bunched and moving, putting dung and urine where it was meant to be, not where it's so commonly found by permanent water sources or shady trees. We were growing topsoil and sequestering carbon. This was our first attempt. It was so obviously right from day one. I couldn't have told you why. We had no idea what we were doing, but we were excited to be observing and responding to what happened on a daily basis. in our new paddocks and noticing how differently our animals behaved with every change that we made. Then we came across Alan Savory's TED Talk, and that completely blew our minds. Shortly afterwards, we were sitting watching television, and this advert suddenly appeared on my iPad. I immediately and unilaterally decided to book and pay for a ticket for myself. Oops, I hadn't run it past Jilly. I hadn't checked that I could get a flight even. I turned to her and said, "Sweetheart, I've done something really stupid." Showed her the advert. "I've just booked myself in for this conference without consulting you." And she said, "So I don't get to come?" Before we went to bed, we'd spent what seemed like a lot of money. We flew to America, and those few days in October 2015 were life-changing. We left for home feeling that we were right at the cutting edge of the changes that humanity needed to be making. I was 70 and knew that with Jilly's help and the beliefs that I now held, that I had some significant work to do. A lot of it fueled by what I had previously considered to be my wasted past experience. It actually became very valuable. We have never really wanted to run a business here ourselves. We'd both done that before and didn't want to do it again. But over time, it had steadily been heading in that direction. And we'd been getting older. I can't say that I ever noticed that until it was almost too late. Joel Salatin suggested in one of his books that us older folk should be getting out of the way and helping the young to get into farming, and at the same time helping ourselves to get out. By swapping our experience, expertise and money for physical energy that we were fast running out of. Self-interest has played a big part in all of this. We didn't want to leave this heaven on earth, but not coping with the work was becoming a problem. So we were looking for the right couple. Dan and Fika showed up in September 2016 and seemed to be a good fit. Everything went well until November 2018, when Fika became pregnant. This seemed to change their whole physical and emotional landscape, and in early 2019 they came and told us they couldn't stay. It was a big shock, not least because we had come to be very fond of them both. When they left in mid-summer 2019, it seemed like we had wasted 3.5 years. However, were we going to find the right people? Well, Dave and Alison found us in mid-2019 through some friends that we'd helped with a business startup in Glasgow a few years ago. It was suggested by them that they would write to us. They arrived here in January this year, and we've been piling through the work, training and familiarization, and they've really straightened us out in short order. Other than for the pandemic, I think we're back on track. During these ups and downs, we've been piloting and trialling various enterprises designed to differentiate ourselves from the competition, finding niches into which we fitted, whether it be managing our land and soils differently, whether it be rainbow egg-laying hens, 100% grass-fed beef and lamb, pastured chicken, or that we were not organic because we're beyond it, choosing always to be customer endorsed and certified. So what you see here are the photographs of the beginnings of all of this over the past few years. Jilly had always wanted to have chickens, but we couldn't have them because we had a mink problem. We trapped 70 or so in 4 or 5 years, and then I asked her, "Well, how many chickens do you want? A dozen?" And she said, "Oh, for goodness sake, no, 5 would be fine." So I built her this chicken hut, which became known as the chalet, because it looks like one, on a small trailer that was sitting around in the yard doing nothing. The first year, we had 65 chickens. Mark II followed as a matter of urgency, followed by Mark III, the Chick Inn. We very quickly realised that chickens provided fantastic ecosystem services and are really great pasture renovators when coupled with grazing animals. We piloted heritage chickens and pastured broilers for meat to find out whether we could grow them successfully in our wet climate. We're now licensed to kill chickens on farm and are the first new entrants into the Scottish poultry industry since devolution, and I'm the oldest chicken slaughterman in the country. We fattened lambs to 18 months here ever since 2013, but we couldn't control them. All our fences run down to the sea, so all they had to do was wait for low tide, and then they could graze anywhere they liked. We now have them under control and graze them with the cattle and chicken. We use a Kiwi Tech 3-line electric fence system, which is equally good for cattle and sheep. It gives us the opportunity to have an infinitely flexible system that means we can change the format of our multi-paddock system at will to suit our stock and ecosystem management. This is me demonstrating the ease with which a 3-line fence can be put up. It's equally quick to take down. It is very clever. We now graze behind electric fences winter and summer. Holistic planned grazing means that we know in advance of the year which paddock our animals will be in at any date during the summer or winter grazing periods, and that they will be in the right place at the right time for the right reasons. All paddocks get rested for 60 to 90 days between grazings. We've seen a 297.38% increase in forage production since 2015. Now for some befores and afters. The results. 2003. What do you see? A pasture with short grass, set stocked, overgrazed, understocked and liable to runoff. Same view. What's the difference? Longer grass, a pasture that has been allowed to recover, an explosion of trees and vegetation and more diversity. These pastures will infiltrate water and store it. No runoff. This was taken just after we'd taken possession of the farm. The valley was floor to ceiling rushes. You can see that I've been doing some topping. I wished I'd taken the photograph earlier, before any topping had been done, because 16 years later, same view, a different time of year, but I'm sure you can see the difference. I can tell you that most of the change, with all of these pictures including this one, has happened in the last 5 years. Same valley from a different angle, and animals up to their bellies in grass. I think this is just beautiful. This is a short clip that was taken from pretty much the same place as the last photo in February 2013, just 2 years before we changed our management practices. This used to happen in winter after heavy rain. It doesn't happen anymore. Why? Greater infiltration because we've been repairing our water cycle. In May 2016, I did my holistic management training. As part of the coursework, I was asked to take photographs of what I thought demonstrated ineffective and effective water cycles, nutrient cycles, energy flow and community dynamics. All of the next photographs were taken on the 5th of May 2016, which quite coincidentally happened to be the 40th anniversary of my dad's death. I think that he would have been very proud of me for doing what I was doing just now. Farmers at the time that this was taken were complaining that it was too cold, that nothing was growing, and that there was no grass. So what do you notice? Look at the foreground. No one seems to have noticed that the roadsides and the grass there is growing. The land in the background is overgrazed, understocked, with no rest, and no energy reserves to grow from. The same field, looking down onto the pasture over the fence, what do you see? Not much grass, lots of bare soil, and no diversity. Now let's look at our own pastures, looking across and down. This is less than a mile down the road from the last photographs. Same day, all the same native grasses, just very different management. I'm going to finish this evening by showing you a daily move. This is something that the uninitiated imagine to be a chore. It's something I really enjoy. I hope you notice the grazed and trampled grass compared to the ungrazed. It looks really untidy, really scruffy. But that's what masses of armour on the soil looks like. I'm going to finish with two quotes, both relevant to the beliefs that we've touched on and the paradigm shifts that we've talked about. Our past experience has not made us the way we are. It has made us believe we are the way we are. In other words, we can always change and decide to become the people that we'd love to be, to discard the beliefs we were gifted at birth for the knowings that come from our own life experience. We might then know that with courage and our own beliefs that we can truly commit to stepping out purposefully in the direction of our dreams. Buckminster Fuller said, in order to change an existing paradigm, you do not struggle to change the problematic model, you create a new model and make the old one obsolete. That, in essence, is the higher service to which we are all being called. I think we are in the right place, at the right time, with the right information and the right people. We just need to step forward and get this thing done. Thank you for listening. I hope you've enjoyed it. I'll be happy to take any questions if you have them.
Thank you so much, Roger. Okay, I'm just looking to see if we've got applause coming for you. Thank you so much, Roger.
Thank you very much. You too. Thank you for being there. I think it's amazing that so many people, have thought to listen to this. And, because I couldn't give you the whole 9 yards because the story is much more complicated and much more fun than that. I mean, stuff that's happening here you wouldn't believe, but we don't have the time for that. So anyway, questions.
Yeah, so go ahead and put your questions into the chat. And I just want to apologize for the technical issues. The challenge is that many farms just don't have good internet, and if Roger would have shown the PowerPoint from his end, we wouldn't have heard him and it would have gotten all garbled. So that's why we did it this other way, and I apologize, it just didn't work well at all. But thank you so much, Roger, for putting all that effort into it and for giving us a brilliant presentation. So we have a question from Alina. She says, how did you acquire your land?
What, the land here in Scotland?
Yes.
Can people hear me now? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. When we sold the farm, I've been described as a rich guy. I've been described as an old hippie fool. I've been described as all sorts of things. But the farms were sold, and we gave all the money away. It was a great leveler in the family. So every part of the family got capital out of the sale of the farm. I was left enough to buy myself a house and enough money to renovate it. We bought an Elizabethan hall house, which was falling apart. and spent 10 years doing it up. So I didn't actually have that much money. Julie has a little bit of money of her own. And we came up here looking, well, I mean, I wasn't looking for a farm. You know, I came up here to make furniture. Would you believe that? You know, when I sold the farm, I was saying to one of my boys, I don't really know what I'm going to do with myself. And he said, oh, for goodness sake, Dad, get a clue. And I said, pardon? Cheeky little blighter, you know? And he said, get a clue. He said, what did you want to do when you were 17? I said, well, I wanted to go to art school. He said, get off your arse. So I did, and I did a 2-year furniture design and making course and absolutely loved it. So that's what I came up here to do. So we went looking for a farm. How did we acquire the land? I got a letter from my solicitor about my mum's death and probate. She died just before we came up here. I decided I didn't want to have anything to do with her estate, and I'd asked my solicitor that I shouldn't be an executor, so he took me off the list. Anyway, I got this letter saying, will you please get these documents signed? And I rang him up and I said, what do you mean get these documents signed? I'm not meant to be doing any of this stuff. And he said, oh, please, Roger, it's a mistake this end. Just go and find a notary, go and find a solicitor and get these things signed. So I went in there, sorry, this is turning into a bit of a story, but it's part of this magic that happened to us where we could do no wrong. I was sitting in front of this guy signing these papers, and he'd been sort of questioning him about why we were up here. And, oh, you're looking for a property, what are you looking for? And the phone rang while we were sitting there. And he answered the phone, and when he finished talking to this person, whoever it was, he looked at me and said, I think I found your house for you. And I said, pardon? He said, I found your house for you. This place is absolutely stunning. You need to speak to these people and go and have a look at it. And I said, where is it? He said, Lismore. I said, where's that? He said, it's an island. I said, we don't do islands. We're not interested in islands. He said, you're not listening to me. Go and have a look. So he picked up the phone, dialed a number, handed me the phone. I spoke to this woman and said, I'm told we need to come and have a look at your house. She said, it's not on the market. I said, I know. I said, I've been told by this guy to come and have a look at it. So we made an appointment to go out the next day. We arrived at 11 o'clock, and by 1:30, the deal was done. And I got to tell you that, and I said to this woman, I'd been told by the solicitor, say, you must ask. We had the money in the bank because we'd sold our house down south. But down here, when you say you're going to buy a place, once you said you shaking hands on it, you can't back out. So anyway, he said, you need to ask this woman, what would you be prepared to sell this for to me? What money would you want me to pay you in order for you not to put this on the market? So I asked her the question, and she said, well, it's valued at £80,000. And I said, it's not the question I asked you. And so she said, well, do you mean what would we like for it? And I said, yes. She said, and she sort of looked at her partner and said, $250,000. And Jill and I looked at one another, and I said, we need to go and have a talk. So we went outside, and Jilly said, but it's so small. I said, look at the view. I said, there's nothing. We can knock the house down. That doesn't really matter if we really want to. And she said, well, yes. So, you know, we had £500,000 in the bank. So we went in and we said, you got a deal. The woman burst into tears and said, oh. And she said, I can now do what I want. And I said, what's that? She said, buy a motor trike and move to Las Palmas. There you go. We were known as Mr. and Mrs. $250,000 here for the first 6 months. Nobody had ever paid that amount of money for a house and a farm. So there you go.
Roger, we have one more question for you. How many cows has the number grown, and how do you winter them?
I'll start with the end of the question. Our animals are outside all year round. We never have them in. And we haven't grown our animal numbers. We have 10 bullocks and 10 sheep. And the number is predicated by the size of our market. You know, Gilly and I are market makers. We're selling direct to the public. You know, there was no market. Nobody wanted our meat. And so we bought our way into the market. We discounted stuff by 50% when we started. And we were discounting up until about 5 years ago. and now we're selling at full retail. But the size of our market, we could have lots more animals here. I think actually it would probably be the case that more animals would not be possible here in the winter, because they would make such a mess if we, we can deal with a certain number, but we get to a point, I think, where they would do a lot of damage. So we don't think that the money that we're going to make here, or the money that our new people are going to make here, is going to be made out of livestock, in the sense of cattle or sheep. They are a management tool, but they keep their face clean. We produce nearly all our own food. We eat a lot of meat. We produce all our own vegetables. We produce our own chicken. We produce our own eggs. We don't have a dairy cow. Don't think we could face the work. But we're talking about all that stuff at the moment, and I think the likely enterprises are an egg-laying flock and pastured broilers. We can do it, because pastured broilers, I'm sure you can understand that if we increase our animal numbers, it's 2 years before we see a return from that increase. With pastured broilers, we've just taken 50 chicks just in the last week. Within 12 weeks, we've got a finished product. So very quick turnover of cash, and it's the same with eggs. And neither enterprise costs a whole heap of money to get into. So, and we also know
Excuse me, Roger. Guess what? We've got 4 more questions.
Okay, sorry.
May I ask
rabbiting
if you
on.
can do this one real quickly?
Yeah.
Can you accept interns?
Yep, we will be. Not this year. We're planning to build a house for Dave and Alison. That was going to be happening. That was starting this April, because that's been stopped. But we're building a house for them once they've got a house to live in. I think we were talking about it just today, that we'll be having interns here. Yep.
Okay, and then how do you know where the boundaries are in your paddocks? You mentioned they are marked out. Is that just with differences in grazing heights, or do you have some posts to help you?
We have small stakes, and we have yellow garden hose, lengths of garden hose that fit over barbed wire fences wherever we've got them. So either yellow markers on fences or posts in the ground, but they're all marked.
Okay, great. And then was the tree cover on the farm planted, or was it natural regeneration?
Most of it's natural regeneration, but we've been planting, we planted 1,500 trees last year. We planted several thousand trees here, so it's a mixture, but there's a lot of natural regeneration.
And then, go ahead.
Scotland grows trees. If anything wants to grow here, it's a tree. Absolutely.
That's a good point. Next question, do you sell all your produce locally on the island, or do you have to go off the island to sell?
It's a mixture of both. We never wanted to have people on the island feel they were obliged to buy from us just because we'd started a direct sales business. So we waited for them to ask. And nearly all of our beef and lamb was sold off the island until about 3 years ago. And then, people were saying, who do you sell to? I said, well, anybody. So what about me? They say, yeah, if you want to. So there was never any coercion to get our local population of 162 people involved in buying product from us. We wanted them to come to us rather than us go to them.
We've got 2 more questions here. How are the livestock fed in the winter?
They're mostly fed on stockpile. Stockpile being grass that's allowed to grow on from midsummer to achieve a reasonable height, but not to be in senescence. So we have about 30 acres of stockpile, and so we'll feed them on stockpile behind electric fences until we run out of that. Our stockpile this year lasted us, we finished our grazing season on the 21st of November, and our stockpile lasted us until the end of February. And then we started supplementary feeding, and we feed them grass pellets because we don't want to feed our animals on anything other than grass or grass related products.
I've got another question here. On the start of my journey into regenerative agriculture as a beef and sheep part-time farmer, where would you suggest starting as my priority? Mob grazing?
Is it a mob grazing question mark? Yeah.
Where should
Yeah,
a new regenerative farmer start? That's the question. What was the
the,
focus in the beginning?
the advice that I can well remember is from Joel Salatin, which is start with what you've got. Don't buy your way into trying to make your farm work by applying amendments. You know, most people will be talking about reseeding and liming and all that rubbish that is still peddled by agricultural advisory organizations of various kinds. The advice is get some animals and start to play with what you've got. You know, people also say, how many animals can you have an acre? And, you know, how long do you leave them there? And I say, well, just bang them into a paddock, doesn't matter what size it is, and see what happens. Do some research for yourself. You know, so I would say, yeah, we started mob grazing. I think you know, the difficulty is to get away from doing what you've been used to doing, and just doing things differently, and trying stuff out to see what works in your location, because whoever it is who's asking the question, your farm is going to be in a different geographical location, it's going to be climatically different, the soil's going to be different, the whole thing is going to be, there is no prescriptive. I think I would start by watching as much as you can of the videos online from people like Joel Salatin, Gabe Brown, Colin Zeiss, Charles Massey, Richard Perkins in Sweden. I spent 10 days with him last year. Absolutely mind-blowing stuff coming out of people like him. You know, sit with a computer and watch what other people are doing. Don't, for goodness sake, don't believe you can copy people, but you can take concepts from those people. You know, read all you can. Get Richard Perkins's book, Regenerative Agriculture. It's £75. Go and invest in yourself. Get yourself to be informed. Use the internet. Yeah, you can ask people like me. I couldn't tell you what to do without coming and visiting you on your farm. You know your land best. Just know that if you break your land up into smaller paddocks, whatever you do, whatever you don't put permanent fences up. Go with electric fences. They're cheap, they're amazingly flexible. You can have a paddock of any size, any shape, any way you want, any time, and just play around with it and try to create lots of, I don't know how many animals you've got, but create lots of paddocks. The more paddocks you have, the more flexibility you have. You know, if you have 20 acres and you have 10 paddocks, you know, you're going to paddock 1, and if you go around the 10 paddocks, by the time you get back to paddock 1, you've only had 10 days rest. Rest is really, really important. If you make it into 20 paddocks, and you do the same rotation, you've got 20 days rest. If you make them even smaller, you get 60 paddocks, you get 60 days rest. Even if your paddocks are tiny, 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 you know, it's so exciting to try. And so I'd say, just get in there and start. Don't worry about whether you're going to get it right or wrong, and get your water sorted out. You know, you need water in all the paddocks that you're going to be using. So make sure you've got your water sorted. That's been the limiting thing with us. You know, we've just put in a new water system in the last month. And
guess what? We've got more questions.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Well, I'm just.
Yeah, no, it's a brilliant answer. People are really loving your answers.
I'm excited. Yeah, go on.
People are loving your answers, and that's why they keep asking more questions. Where is your abattoir?
It's 112 miles away. It's a pain in the arse. That's, you know, we've got a stock trailer and we can get 4 animals in it, and we used to take them 4 at a time. So because that's why we had 4 animals to start with, because we couldn't take any more. Transport charges for getting somebody else to do it is about 800 quid to take five bullocks and 10 sheep. So it's one of the really big problems. We're taking the animals ourselves this year, but we're having to do it in 2 lots. We're taking one bullock and 10 sheep in one load, and then 4 bullocks in the second load. And we've got some very obliging slaughterhouse people, but it's 112 miles away, and we've got to get the meat home after they've done their butchering and hanging and all that sort of stuff. So it's a real problem. Yeah.
Okay, I think this is the last question.
It's a pity.
The Yorkshire soil runoff video is very powerful. Can you share copies?
Can you what?
Can you share copies of the Yorkshire soil runoff video?
Yeah, sure. If people you can give people my email address if they want to write to me. I'd be very happy to receive emails, and if you want me to send you a copy of the video, yeah, sure thing. Yep.
Okay, well, if it's all right, I'll send it out tomorrow because I have it now. Are you
okay.
happy for me to do that?
You can send any of the information to people if they want it.
Okay, very good, very good. Now we got another question. What is the chance that slaughtering on farm will ever happen in Scotland?
I think maybe the crisis that we're going through at the moment. I think we might see some huge changes. I think you can see what's happened to our island population and an increase in people wanting to be resilient. People buying local food. We've sold a lot of beef and lamb on the island in the last 8 weeks, and you get the feeling that actually local production will probably become the norm. And if it becomes the norm, I think there will be a great upsurge in demand for us being able to slaughter on farm. I don't think it's likely to happen anytime soon, but I think the more that we recognize that global is not necessarily terribly helpful, and that if we're going to survive as communities, we need to be doing more stuff for ourselves. And this pandemic has been showing just how capable we are of doing things for ourselves when the chips are down. So Churchill's saying, never waste a crisis. I think we're finding out that people are actually rather enjoying the business of the independence that we've been getting in organizing our own affairs. So I think it might come.
Thank you once again, Roger. That was tremendous. People really loved it.
Good.
And
Good.
I want to thank everyone for attending and for sticking with it. And
hey, I was just Vincent, hi, I can see you there. Love to France. Yeah. Yeah, he's no course member of mine, isn't he? So anyway, is that it then?
I think we're done. I don't see any other questions. People loved your 5 keywords: commitment, hard work, dedication, responsibility, and action. Yep.
Commitment, I think, is the most important. And that thing from E.H. Murray, I've always lived by that. And I think if you're not committed, you're not going to go very far with this, because it's like farming really demands that you have to do what needs to be done when it needs to be done, whether you like it or not. You can't finesse that one. And anybody who gets into farming needs to recognize that it's bloody hard work. It doesn't mean to say that it's not pleasurable, but I've been making compost today. I mean, hot compost, piling stuff up in heaps about 1.5 meters across and about 2 meters high, and I've got to turn that every day. And you think, oh, don't really feel like doing that. Well, that's tough. If it needs to be done, you've got to do it. So have a good attitude and just go and get on with it. And I think farmers are pretty much like that. But if you're not of that mindset and you don't have that work ethic, don't get into it. You know, you have to be prepared to really graft at this thing. So anyway, yeah, hard work, dedication, responsibility, and action. Go and do something with this stuff. Let's get the job done. I'm sure that we can. I'll leave you with that. Thank you very much for listening. Enjoyed talking to you.